This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Good morning. It's May 1st, 2025. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
President Trump's cabinet has been touting his first 100 days.
It's unparalleled.
Sagar Meghani, Washington.
Senate Democrats' latest effort to stop President Trump's worldwide tariffs has failed. I'm Rich Johnson.
The U.S. and Ukraine reach a rare earths mineral deal. We'll have details.
Oral arguments heard at the Supreme Court surrounding a religious charter school in Oklahoma. I'm Clayton Neville.
On Wall Street, a mixed April is in the books for stocks as investors digest a shrinking U.S. economy. I'm Jessica Ettinger.
Surprising details surrounding a police officer shot inside a Pennsylvania hospital and a football team's hefty fine for a prank phone call. All ahead on America in the Morning. President Trump meets with his cabinet, which included praise for accomplishments for the past 100 days of his second term, a send-off for Elon Musk, but concern over economic reports and placing blame for a slumping stock market. Washington correspondent Sagar Meghani reports.
Congratulations on this truly historic first 100 days of your administration.
It's unparalleled.
Never seen anything like it. Thank you.
Thank you for your extraordinary leadership.
Elon, I love the double hat, by the way. He's the only one that can do that. Get away with it.
Well, Mr. President, they say I wear a lot of hats. It's true. Even my hat has a hat.
While on the Capitol steps,
Donald Trump's first 100 days can be defined by one big F word: failure.
Top Senate Democrat Chuck Schumer and House counterpart Hakeem Jeffries earlier.
Donald Trump and Republicans thought they could shock and awe us into submission.
President Trump is trying to pass the blame following a weak economic report tied to his tariffs. The government says the economy shrank last quarter for the first time in 3 years, with GDP down at an average annual rate of 0.3%.
That's Biden. That's not Trump, because we came in on January, this is the quarterly numbers, and we came in and I was very against everything that Biden was doing in terms of the economy, destroying our country.
But the drop was fueled by a surge in imports as foreign companies try to get ahead of the president's sweeping tariffs. The president insisted in an all-caps social media post it has nothing to do with tariffs. Later, though, he seemed to acknowledge a growing trade war with China might result in fewer and more expensive products for Americans.
Much of it we don't need. Somebody said, oh, the shelves are going to be open. Well, maybe the children will have $2 instead of $30, and maybe the $2 will cost a couple of bucks more than they would normally. But we're not talking about something that we have to go out of our way. They have ships that are loaded up with stuff, much of which, not all of it, but much of which we don't need.
Sagar Meghani, Washington.
The Senate tried but failed to pass a measure to undo President Trump's tariffs on many countries. Correspondent Rich Johnson reports the measure failed despite the support of some Republicans.
Leading the GOP contingent voting for the measure, Kentucky's Rand Paul.
I stand against this emergency. I stand against these tariffs. And I stand against shredding the Constitution.
Republicans Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins also voted for the measure, but it failed on a 49-49 tie. Two senators who were likely yes votes, Kentucky Republican Mitch McConnell and Democrat Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island, were absent. McConnell's office would not say why he was not in the Senate. Whitehouse was traveling back to the U.S. from South Korea. The Huffington Post reports Democratic leaders knew that Whitehouse wouldn't make it, but still agreed to hold the vote. Before that vote, Democrats pretty much had the Senate floor to themselves. Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts said President Trump has managed to trash the U.S. economy in just 100 days.
With so many indications that American families are in serious trouble, our government should be throwing them a lifeline. Instead, President Trump is throwing them an anchor.
Similar words from California's Alex Padilla.
A vote against this resolution is a vote to maintain Trump's tariffs that are so clearly devastating our economy already. And it'll move us closer to a recession solely of Trump's doing.
Earlier this week, Senate Republican Whip John Barrasso of Wyoming said the Democrats knew the bill was going nowhere. North Carolina's Tom Tillis called the resolution a political exercise. And GOP leader John Thune of South Dakota said he expects to see more of what he calls symbolic votes engineered by Senate Democrats. Again, the Republican who did speak, Rand Paul, explained why he helped sponsor the bill to cancel the Trump tariffs.
Tariffs bring us closer to the day when the people are ruled by a czar of industrial policy. When that day comes, we will wish we had defended the Constitution when we still had the power to do so. We cannot afford to stand idly by while the constitutional principle of the separation of powers is eviscerated.
I'm Rich Johnson.
Religious school, state funding. Supreme Court decides when America in the Morning continues after these messages. Thanks for listening. You're with America in the Morning. AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy is tracking some thunderstorms.
A storm system moving through the northern plains will cause several showers and a few thunderstorms from North and South Dakota into Minnesota. We'll also have a few showers developing to the west of that from southeast Montana into eastern Wyoming and Colorado. Some snow can even mix in parts of the central Rockies. The main system we are watching will be lifting northward today from the Central Plains first thing this morning into the central Great Lakes later today. This will draw moisture northward as it does so, with showers and thunderstorms developing along the associated cold front. These storms will run the area from southern Michigan into northwestern Pennsylvania and then southward through Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, as well as northern Mississippi into Alabama. These storms will produce damaging winds, hail, drenching rainfall, and even a tornado. Isolated thunderstorms will also continue farther to the southwest into Louisiana, into Texas, and these storms, too, could produce some gusty winds. Outside of the severe thunderstorms, the same system will cause some showers and thunderstorms through central Missouri into central Illinois, especially during the morning hours, and a steadier rain will develop on the northern side of the system through northern Illinois into northern Michigan. Heading out west, it'll be a largely dry day with some sunshine, but a weak system in Southern California could produce a couple of afternoon thunderstorms, mainly in higher elevations. Most areas will have above average warmth with highs in the 70s and 80s in the north to mid 90s in the southwest. In the east, warmer weather will move in ahead of that same storm system in the Great Lakes. There will be a few scattered afternoon thunderstorms developing in parts of North Carolina into West Virginia and Virginia. Highs will be moving into the 60s in northern New England with 70s and 80s for the rest of the Northeast into the Middle Atlantic. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
Remember, you can follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. Despite some last-minute hurdles, the U.S. and Ukraine have signed a deal to create the United States-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund. The agreement pushed by President Trump that gives the U.S. rights to Ukrainian rare earth minerals. Both sides were ready to sign the agreement on critical minerals and other resources earlier, but the U.S. said it wanted the main minerals resources agreement and the creation of an investment fund document signed at the same time. The deal gives Washington access to Ukraine's vast critical minerals and natural resources and gives Kyiv a measure of assurance about continued American support in its ongoing war with Russia. Among the metals that the U.S. will gain access is titanium, along with lithium, graphite, and manganese, which are used in electric vehicle batteries. Shifting gears, the Supreme Court hears oral arguments on whether a religious charter school can receive state funding. Following the story, correspondent Clayton Neville.
With Republican state leaders across the country pushing for expanded school choice, there are national implications in the case involving St. Isidore of Seville Catholic Virtual School in Oklahoma. The state's attorney general argues that public funding of religious schools is unconstitutional. Other critics, like Reverend Lori Walkie, believe the public funding would violate the separation between church and state.
As a pastor and as a person of faith, it is so important that we maintain the separation of church and state so that everyone can practice their freedom of conscience and the tenets of their faith as they see fit.
Michael McGinley is attorney for St. Isidore of Seville.
Schools like St. Isidore cannot be excluded from Oklahoma's charter school program simply because of their faith. The law is on our side.
Republican leaders in Oklahoma, including Governor Kevin Stitt, support the funding for St. Isidore.
The fact that these people say it's indoctrinating our young people is the dumbest argument I've heard. Because you don't have to send your kids to that charter school. You can go to your zip code school.
The Supreme Court's conservative justices signaled this week they are open to allowing what would be the country's first publicly funded religious charter school, a decision, though, not expected until this summer. I'm Clayton Neville.
When we return on America in the Morning, jobs report and spring home sales price drop after these messages. The Business Report is brought to you by Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments has a team of specialists in investing, financial planning, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. With the Thursday Report, here's CNBC's Jessica Ettinger.
Wall Street opens this morning for the first day of May trading after a mixed day for stocks yesterday, and a mixed April is now in the books. The economy shrank in the first quarter for the first time in 3 years on the Trump tariffs. The GDP gross domestic product numbers sent stocks into a dive yesterday, but the Dow clawed back 800 points to finish higher. The S&P 500 index was also in the green yesterday. The major averages for the year are all still lower.
We've had a series of shocks to the system that involve tariffs. And I think that if you remember, every one of the people in the cabinet, the president says, look, we're in for a hard time.
CNBC Mad Money host Jim Cramer. President Trump's first 100 days were tough on business and Wall Street.
It's the third worst. The worst was when Jerry Ford took over after Nixon resigned. And then number two was 73 for Nixon, so not great company.
Stock Traders Almanac CEO Jeffrey Hirsch on CNBC. Facebook parent Meta and Microsoft, each out after the closing bell last night with strong quarterly results beating estimates. Watch those shares today. The chief of staff for Vice President Mike Pence in President Trump's first term, he has a take on how President Trump may move on from the tariff agenda that has spooked investors.
I think you'll probably see basically a Pyrrhic victory with one country or two country that they claim establishes a larger resetting of the trade agenda and pivoting back probably to relenting a little bit on this trade war.
That's a board chair at the conservative Advancing American Freedoms, Mark Short on CNBC. A possible crack in the job market. ADP says far fewer people were hired in the private sector in April than expected.
62,000. The estimate was 120,000. Non-farm payroll estimate for the full government and private payroll was 133,000 for Friday.
CNBC senior economics reporter Steve Leisman. We get the government's big employment report tomorrow morning. A mixed-up spring home buying market. Pending home sales for March surged by the most in a year, but mortgage applications continue to slip.
Well, March was great. Sales were up 6.1% month over month. Some of that is standard springtime home buying. Some of that is because there was a dip in rates, and then everything changed in April. 36% of all available homes in April across the United States had a price drop. April saw more price reductions on homes nationally than any April in the past 12 years.
Serhant brokerage CEO Ryan Serhant on CNBC. Oil closed yesterday at its lowest in more than 4 years. Good for drivers. But the dip is because traders are betting global demand is weakening as countries like the U.S. face an economic slowdown. On today's watch list, earnings are coming from Amazon, Apple, and McDonald's.
CNBC's Jessica Ettinger. Prank phone call results in fine from the NFL. When America in the Morning continues after these messages. There are new details into a February shooting that happened inside a Pennsylvania hospital. Correspondent Haya Panjwani explains.
A prosecutor says an officer killed while responding to a Pennsylvania hospital siege in February was hit by police gunfire. York County District Attorney Tim Barker announced the results of the investigation into the hospital shooting. West York Patrolman Andrew Duarte was the officer killed.
Two-shot strike Officer Duarte. One shot
strikes him in the left arm and goes across his chest. The other strikes him at the left side chest area.
Barker says the attack at the UPMC Memorial Hospital's intensive care unit happened after the gunman learned from a doctor that the woman he lived with had died after treatment there. Barker called the officers heroes who ran into a dangerous situation.
They were willing to lay down their lives for every single person at that hospital.
I'm Haya Panjwani.
The NFL has fined a team and one of its assistant coaches following a prank phone call to a notable star quarterback. Correspondent Gethin Coolball reports.
The Atlanta Falcons have been fined $250,000 and defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich has been fined $100,000 as the result of Ulbrich's son participating in a prank call to Shedeur Sanders during the NFL draft. The NFL has confirmed the fines for the roles by the Falcons and Ulbrich in failing to prevent the disclosure of confidential information distributed to the club in advance of the NFL draft. The Falcons, who disclosed the role of Ulbrich's 21-year-old son Jack in the prank call Friday, said Wednesday they accept the discipline. I'm Gethin Coolbaugh.
America in the Morning for Thursday, May 1st, 2025 is produced by Jeff McKay. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour,
Trump officials say they don't have to answer to a judge when it comes to the potential return of Abrego Garcia. I'm Clayton Neville.
This is hazing on steroids.
A high school lacrosse hazing incident goes off the rails. I'm Bob Brown.
potential cover-up in an Iranian port explosion. Tesla's board considered a Musk replacement, an anti-Israel protester released from jail, and who's that feathered friend wreaking havoc on a Massachusetts town?
Chinese electronics testing labs to be banned by the FCC. I'm tech correspondent Chuck Palm.
A new director has signed on for My Way or the Highway. I'm Kevin Carr.
America in the Morning, back after these messages. This is America in the Morning. Update on severe weather across the nation. Here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
AccuWeather severe weather experts are once again looking at heavier, gusty thunderstorms today and tonight. These storms are going to form along a storm system shifting northward from the Central Plains first thing this morning into the Central Great Lakes later today. This will draw moisture northward as it does so, with showers and thunderstorms developing along the associated cold front. These storms will run the area from southern Michigan and northwestern Pennsylvania, southward through Indiana and Ohio, Kentucky and Tennessee, as well as northern Mississippi into Alabama. These storms will produce damaging winds, hail, drenching rainfall, and even a tornado. Isolated thunderstorms will also continue farther southwest into Louisiana, into Texas. These storms, too, could produce some strong winds. To the north of the system, there will be a few showers through Wisconsin and a steadier rain through northern Illinois into northern Michigan. Outside of the severe thunderstorms, there'll be some showers and thunderstorms through Missouri into central Illinois, especially during the morning hours. Additional showers and a few thunderstorms will develop along a second system over the northern plains from north and South Dakota into Minnesota. And we'll have a few showers developing to the west of that from southeast Montana into eastern Wyoming and Colorado. And there could even be some snow in parts of the central Rockies. Most of the west will be largely dry with some sunshine, but a weak system in southern California could produce some showers and thunderstorms, mainly in the afternoon and mostly over the higher elevations. Most of the area will otherwise be dry with some sunshine. That's the weather across America. Jackson, Kentucky will have clouds and some sun and a heavy gusty thunderstorm in the afternoon and a high of 79. Showers in Lawrence, Kansas this morning, then some sunshine and a high of 74. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Matt Rindy.
Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Simply search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. The Trump administration is making it clear it won't answer to a judge when it comes to conversations with El Salvador about the deportation of alleged gang member Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports.
Abrego Garcia was deported after living in Maryland and coming up in a local database as an MS-13 gang member. He had never been charged but was deported anyway, and it caused an uproar among some Democrats. This week, a federal judge in Maryland set May deadlines for officials to provide sworn testimony on what's been done to return Garcia to the states. But Secretary of State Marco Rubio indicated that's not the business of the judge when asked by reporters if the U.S. has had talks with El Salvador about a potential move.
Well, I would never tell you that. And you know who else I'll never tell? A judge. Because the conduct of our foreign policy belongs to the President of the United States and the executive branch, not some judge. So we will conduct foreign policy appropriately if we need to. But I'll never discuss it. And no one will ever make us discuss it because that's how foreign policy works.
President Trump was asked about Garcia in a recent interview with ABC News' Terry Moran. He said he could have Garcia returned with one phone call, but suggested Garcia's not the, quote, gentleman he's portrayed by some to be.
They looked, and on his knuckles, he had MS-13.
There's a dispute.
Well, wait a minute. He had MS-13 on his knuckles tattooed.
He had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
Wait a minute. Hey, Terry.
He did not have the letter MS-13.
It says MS-13.
That was Photoshopped. So let me
That was Photoshopped. Terry, you can't do that.
The exchange got awkward at times.
Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. You know, you're doing the interview. I picked you because, frankly, I never heard of you, but that's okay. Hey, but you're not being very nice. He had MS-13 tattooed.
We'll agree to disagree. I want to move on to something else.
Terry.
The judge now asking U.S. attorneys to provide specific justifications for their claims of privileged information. I'm Clayton Neville.
Nearly a dozen high school lacrosse players in upstate New York are in trouble with the law. Bob Brown reports the student athletes were allegedly involved in a dangerous hazing incident.
This is hazing on steroids.
11 Syracuse high school lacrosse players have turned themselves in, avoiding arrest after they allegedly staged a hazing incident last Thursday involving at least 5 younger players on the team. Authorities say 4 students managed to get away, except one. District Attorney Bill Fitzpatrick says the teen's head was covered with a pillowcase, his hands tied, and thrown into the trunk of a car.
The driver of the vehicle purportedly was lost. That was a ruse. They were in a remote part of the county, and then the accomplices jumped out of the woods pretending to be kidnappers.
Investigators say the accomplices were in possession of at least one handgun and at least one knife.
I understand the attitude of boys will be boys, and it's all a rite of passage, and why are you involving yourself in this? I've seen the videotape of what happened to this young man.
WSYR-TV with reaction from the community.
I don't think it's appropriate. I mean, they're young kids, and, kids are kids, but that's not okay. And I don't think it's okay ever to haze for any reason. I mean, you're supposed to be a community.
It's really kind of, it's so traumatizing. It's very difficult, rude, and disrespectful. They got to learn how to be respectful.
The DA's office says the case will most likely be handled in family court. Meantime, the West Hill Central School District Superintendent announcing the lacrosse season has been canceled. I'm Bob Brown.
Iran is being accused of covering up the death toll following a massive explosion at the Iranian port of Bandar Abbas. Fox News is reporting that chemical components used in solid fuel for ballistic missiles somehow ignited. Correspondent John Gambrell has details.
There's still more questions than answers after this explosion at an Iranian port that killed some 70 people and injured over 1,000 others. But what is known as the epicenter of the blast took place next to a shipping terminal, ultimately controlled by an organization overseen by Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And it's part of this complicated system known as bonyads, or foundations, which have controlled large chunks of the Iranian economy since the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Now, the bonyad in particular that controlled this shipping terminal is known as Bonyad Mustazavan, or the Foundation of the Oppressed. Its leadership has almost always been tied to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard that oversees Iran's ballistic missile program. There have been reports that chemicals that would be used to make missile fuel had moved through this port that exploded, known as Shahid Rajai near Bandar Abbas. Now, the Iranian government has denied that this port took in these chemicals. However, a ship associated with this shipment, tracked by the Associated Press, shows that it was near the port in recent weeks. And the way that the port had organized the material that had exploded suggests that they knew that something was volatile inside of it. Meanwhile, a chemical expert who spoke to the Associated Press described the blast as being powerful, kinetic, something that would be a chemical associated potentially with rockets or bomb making. So this all together suggests that there was something that was incredibly dangerous at this port that was mixed in with the rest of the cargo and that ultimately exploded, causing this disaster.
Correspondent John Gambrell. Iran also announced it'll be meeting with France, the UK, and Germany in Rome on Friday ahead of the next negotiation with the Trump administration on the Iranian nuclear program scheduled for this weekend. Among the stories we're covering next, potential ban on imports of Chinese electronics when America in the Morning continues after these messages. There was nearly a changing of the guard at Tesla. Today's Wall Street Journal is reporting that about a month ago, when Elon Musk was spending most of his time at the Department of Government Efficiency and Tesla stock was falling, board members reached out to several executive search firms to work on a formal process of finding a new CEO. Between January and April, as Musk was in Washington, sales and profits at the electric vehicle maker began to plunge. Last week, Tesla reported its first quarter profit was down 71%. In a conference call for the quarterly results, Musk joined the call and said he would pivot away from politics and back to his job at Tesla. Tesla's stock price per share on Christmas Eve was nearly $480. 10 days ago, it had fallen to $227 a share. The federal government is expanding the reasons international students can be stripped of their legal status in the U.S. Correspondent Donna Warder reports.
Attorneys say the federal government expanding the reasons international students can be stripped of their status in the U.S. will mean quicker deportations. New guidelines in a court filing include deporting a student whose visa to enter the U.S. was revoked. In the past, if a student's visa was revoked, they could usually stay in the U.S. to finish school. They just couldn't re-enter the country if they left. Attorneys for immigration students say now the State Department can revoke a visa and deport a student even if they've done nothing wrong. One attorney says a client lost their status in the crackdown because a law enforcement database searched by immigration authorities showed the student was once charged with a traffic offense. Donna Warder, Washington.
A federal judge has ordered the release of an anti-Israel protester who helped organize riots and protests at Columbia University. Authorities with Immigration and Customs Enforcement had detained Mohsen Madawi last month in Vermont. Madawi, a green card holder, co-founded the Palestinian Student Union at Columbia right after the October 7th, 2023 Hamas attack on Israel. Vermont's two U.S. Senators, Bernie Sanders, an independent, and Peter Welch, a Democrat, both denounced Mandawi's arrest. Upon his release, Mandawi held a news conference outside the court, saying his message to President Trump is, quote, "I'm not afraid of you," end quote. As part of his bond release, Mandawi must reside in Vermont, but can travel to New York City for school and court hearings. For the second time in 2 months, the Middle East nation of Kuwait has released American prisoners. Lisa Dwyer reports.
Kuwait has released an additional 10 American detainees. Kuwait's pardons of now 23 Americans since March amounts to the largest release of U.S. citizens by a single foreign country in years. The prisoners include military contractors and veterans held on drug charges and other offenses by the small, oil-rich nation that bans alcohol and has strict laws regarding drugs. Families have alleged that their loved ones faced abuse while imprisoned, were coerced into signing false confessions, and endured threats against their families. Kuwait is considered a major non-NATO ally of the U.S. There are still thousands of U.S. troops stationed on bases there following the Gulf War in 1991. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
A famous football coach is defending his girlfriend following a CBS interview. Details from correspondent Gethin Coolbaugh.
North Carolina football coach Bill Belichick has defended girlfriend Jordan Hudson for interjecting during a CBS interviewer's questions about their relationship and said she was, quote, simply doing her job. That followed an appearance on CBS News Sunday morning to promote his upcoming book on his coaching life. In the interview, Hudson objected to a question about how the two had met. The 73-year-old Belichick said in his statement that the segment presents selectively edited clips to suggest a false narrative that the 24-year-old Hudson tried to control the interview. I'm Gethin Coolbaugh.
The Federal Communications Commission has scheduled a vote for May 22nd to ban any electronic equipment that's been tested in Chinese labs from being imported into the United States. Chuck Palm has details in today's Tech Report.
Chinese testing labs may be deemed a risk to U.S. national security from testing all electronic devices like smartphones, cameras, and computers for use in the United States. The FCC will be voting on a rule that will finalize the restrictions placed on any electronics shipped to the United States from China. Any and all electronics imported to the United States must go through the FCC's equipment authorization process before they can be imported. FCC Chair Brendan Carr said in an interview, "We're addressing another potential loophole in our national security process by ensuring that only trustworthy labs can participate in that process." In November of 2022, the FCC banned approvals of new telecommunications equipment from Chinese-owned Huawei and ZTE, as well as telecom and video surveillance equipment from Hytera Communications. And the FCC estimates that roughly 75% of all electronics are tested at labs located inside China. For more, find me at chuckpalm.com.
A check of sports now on America in the Morning. Here's Robert Workman.
Stanley Cup playoffs. In the East, the Capitals crunched the Canadiens 4-1 to win that series 4-1. Their first playoff series victory since winning the Stanley Cup 7 years ago and their first clincher at home in a decade. Defenseman Jacob Chychrun.
We wanted to come out in front of our fans and feed off the energy and try to take some life out of them early and let them know that we were going to come out ready to do everything we could to close out the series.
Washington will meet the Carolina Hurricanes in the next round. The Panthers ousted the Lightning 6-3 to take that series in 5 games as well. The defending champs await the Toronto-Ottawa winner. Out west, the Jets beat the Blues 5-3. Winnipeg leads 3-2. The home team has won every game in that set so far. NBA playoffs. Out west, the Timberwolves eliminated the Lakers in 5 games, taking the clincher 103-96. Rudy Gobert had career playoff highs of 27 points and 24 rebounds. The Rockets stayed alive, beating the Warriors 131-116. Golden State still up 3-2. That series winner will meet Minnesota in the next round. Baseball, the Dodgers reeled in the Marlins 12-7 for their 5th straight win. LA now tied with the Mets for baseball's best record. Diamondbacks held off New York 4-3. Tigers topped the Astros 7-4 and lead the American League. Javi Baez belted his 9th career grand slam. Mariners scored 6 in the 7th and took their 4th in a row, 9-3 over the Angels. Orioles knocked off the Yankees. Royals shut out the Rays. Cardinals took 2 from the Reds. Rockies edged the Braves to snap an 8-game slide. Brenton Doyle's tie-breaking tater off defending NL Cy Young Chris Sale was the difference. That's Thursday Sports.
When we return on America in the Morning, charming town, woodsy menace. After these messages. This is America in the Morning. He wants you to be nice until it's time not to do so. Kevin Carr reports that a new director has been brought in for a huge streaming hit.
The sequel to the wildly popular Roadhouse remake has found its new director. Guy Ritchie, known for gritty, rough-and-tumble action films, has signed on with Amazon MGM Studios.
Right, where was we? Guns for show.
Ritchie got his start making low-budget British gangster films like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels before breaking into Hollywood.
Leave the case alone. Case for you.
Some of his credits include the Sherlock Holmes films with Robert Downey Jr., The Gentleman, and the live-action remake of Aladdin.
It's my way or the highway.
The original Roadhouse, starring Patrick Swayze as a philosophizing bouncer, was a modest release in 1989, but it became a huge hit on home viewing thanks to VHS and heavy rotation on cable.
I want you to be nice until it's time
to not be nice.
The remake starring Jake Gyllenhaal hit Prime last spring and became one of the most watched films on the service.
So you like to fight. You ever win?
No one ever wins a fight.
Gyllenhaal plays an ex-UFC fighter with anger issues working as a bouncer in a dive bar in the Florida Keys.
It takes a lot to get me angry, but when I am, I just can't let go.
Life imitated art, with the film starting a row between director Doug Liman and Amazon. Liman said he was promised a theatrical release and threatened to boycott its premiere.
It'll get worse before it gets better.
Showing the same strength in home viewing as the original, Amazon reports the new Roadhouse was seen by more than 80 million viewers worldwide in the first 2 months. I'm Kevin Carr.
A number of people in a small Massachusetts town have been finding their car's side mirrors and windshields damaged. But it wasn't until surveillance video captured the culprit in action that left the townspeople even more shocked. Correspondent Haya Panjwani reports on who's been terrorizing the friendly community.
During the War of 1812, residents of Rockport, Massachusetts, hurled rocks at the British using their stockings as slings. Today, residents of the coastal town are slinging trash bags and towels over the side mirrors of their cars to protect them from a destructive woodpecker.
We're dealing with a woodpecker that likes to break mirrors.
Resident Benjamin Favillaro.
Had close to 25 mirrors in the last 3 or 4 weeks broken. I know this one on my truck has just been replaced, but my brother had a couple. All of the neighbors have had 2 or 3, so I think we were up to 25 last count.
The community first noticed something when car mirrors appeared to have been adjusted. They believe that a child might have been responsible. Experts from the Audubon Society have visited the neighborhood and have told residents that the behavior is probably because of a male woodpecker during mating season. How are residents reacting to the destructive woodpecker?
It's fun. It's been a fun story. I guess it's a distraction from all that's going on in the world, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it's nobody's really angry that the bird's breaking the mirrors, but it is a little bit of a nuisance. But nobody wants any harm to the bird. He's welcome to come back anytime.
I'm Haya Panjwani.
America in the Morning for Thursday, May 1st, 2025 is produced by Jeff McKay. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.